Good evening, nice to see you all. I wonder whether anybody here has considered the title at all, as my talk has wondered about it, Nourishing the Divine Essence, the understanding the goal of human evolution. Did anybody think about it? If we are or have a divine essence, why would it need nourishing? Did anybody think anything like this, or didn't you think about it at all? Well, I'm not expecting anybody to have thought about it, but if you do, it is perhaps a slight puzzle at first. If there is a divine essence in us, or if we are this divine essence, wouldn't something that is divine be already complete and perfect in itself? I could answer very briefly to that, yes, of course, it would be complete and perfect in itself. But now it's interesting how nourishment, food, does play a part in worship. Let us think for a moment of the communion in the Christian tradition that Jesus, or Yeshua as he was actually called, broke bread and wine. Take this is my body, this is my blood. Do this in remembrance of me. We have a solid bread, well, fairly solid, but coming from a seed, the wheat plant, and we have something liquid. And these are to be taken into the human organism. Now there may be many ways of interpreting this, but I think we'd all agree if this is anything other than a pure symbolic act, then it must have to do with triggering or stimulating a process in the human being. Otherwise it's a symbolical thing, or if you like you can take the official church doctrine. I'll leave that to you. But if you try to look at it with an open mind, could it be that in a certain way, in a certain context, taking in these two substances, and at the moment I'm emphasizing a more solid one and a more liquid one, could it be that this could trigger a process in the human being? Now in the cosmic tradition, this is the wisdom stream that has all gone through the whole of Earth evolution in a hidden way and is behind the wisdoms of all the different great cultures, the Hindu, the Tibetan, the American Indian, the European, the Celtic and so on. They all derive from one source. In this tradition there has always been a certain connection between nourishment and the spiritual path, and those places, those groups that were directly connected with the cosmic tradition tended to be in the form of village communities in remote places. Tibet perhaps, the Caucasus, Asia Minor, perhaps many places. And it could happen, as we know this from certain writings from the community of St. John, because St. John, the disciple of Jesus, also was directly in this tradition, as of course Jesus himself. And they would take the evening meal together, and at the meal time there would also be prayers, meditation, even teaching. Now my own teacher, on our project especially in India, we also do this. I was saying earlier that we just had a piece of jungle, a piece of land which we bought 5 years ago above the river Ganga, a very beautiful spot. And one of the first buildings that was put up was a room where we could sit and eat. It was just a plain room, no furniture, only mats on the floor, and a kitchen, so that we could eat together. We of course had to eat if we went there. Now there would be a circle of people. It would include anybody who was studying there, also those who cooked, those who looked after the land, any local villagers who were there. We would sit in a circle, we would be served, and we would eat. Very often before the food there would be a very beautiful talk or meditation from my teacher, and quite often afterwards. Now my teacher actually, Shiva, he comes from Switzerland. He's a Swiss person, although from his appearance some people take him to be Indian. In the old days, when I first knew him, I was with him in Switzerland and South Germany, occasionally he would also say, for our meeting this afternoon I would like tea to be brought. And tea would be placed in the centre, it would be served out, and then our teaching would go on. And sometimes he brought a form of the communion. There would be a big chalice of grape juice, and there would be bread baked in a certain way, And this would be passed around from one to the other, these two substances. So what is nourishment? And why would physical nourishment be connected in some way with spiritual nourishment? Are they connected, or is it merely symbolical? I would like to go straight on and describe a very basic and very ancient form of Hindu worship. A ritual that you may have seen on your journey in India. It's everywhere to be found in India, and apparently, according to my teacher, this ceremony was found all over the ancient world, but only India has actually preserved it. And this is the worship of the divine in the form of a stone that is placed erect. They call this the Shiva Lingam. And if you go to any Shiva temple, but not only a Shiva temple, in most temples you'll find this somewhere, an erect stone, rounded at the top, and in a kind of vessel, container. Now, some smart people like to say, oh yes, that's clear, that's the male generative organ in the female womb, and so on. Well, yes, it could also be that. It is, of course, also that. But I would like to say also that the stone is represented like that. It looks like a pillar arising from a formed base, a roundish, very often with an opening at one side for a liquid to pour down, and it is rounded at the top. Now, the archetypal or original form of this stone is actually an oval, an ellipsoid. And in India, there's great value placed on such a stone if it is found in nature. You do find, for instance, especially in the Himalayas, you find in the river Ganga, you find stones that have been formed like this that are a perfect ellipsoid. And these are considered very, very valuable. These are considered the natural lingams. So the one that's placed in the temple in a vessel, in a way, is part of this. The base part is hidden. But archetypally, it is this ellipsoid, geometrically perfect. And what is an ellipsoid? It is a form, a perfect mathematical form that has two centres, two focal points. This is how it's geometrically constructed. But in the temples, in the temple form, you usually find it in the form of a pillar with one rounded end. Now the worship goes like this. This is of course a symbol of Shiva, the god Shiva, who is regarded as, in a way, the embodiment of the whole Godhead. He is also a part of the Trinity, Brahma, Vishnu, Shiva, and regarded as part of the Trinity, Brahma would be the creator, Vishnu would be the preserver, that which holds everything in the course of space and time, and Shiva the destroyer, the one who again dissolves everything, transforms it so that the new creation can arise. Therefore Shiva is also portrayed as the great dancer, the king of the dance, surrounded by the flames. But those who are special worshippers of Shiva, the Shaivites, the one for whom Shiva is the aspect of God that they most relate to and want to worship, Shiva himself embodies the whole cosmic creative process. And so in this image of the lingam, the upright erected stone, embedded in the yoni, the female organ if you like, the receptive vessel, we have an image of the cosmic creative process. And this you will find then in the centre, the sanctum as it were, of the temple. You must have seen this in Varanasi, for instance in the main Shiva temples there. And then the worship could go like this. Of course it is accompanied by many mantras, by prayers, by hymns, songs and so on. But the basis of it is this. Pure water is taken and it is poured over the stone. That is the heart of the ritual. I have done this sometimes. The priest has been reading a text and I have been asked in our small temple on our land to pour the water slowly over the stone while he's reading this mantric text. And then the water pours over the stone down into the vessel and from there pours out, perhaps into the earth or perhaps into a vessel to catch this liquid. But the full ritual will involve a great deal more than water. Water is poured first of all, then next usually comes milk. After milk they will very often put curd or yogurt. and then honey, sugar, this ghee, this Indian clarified butter, and other things can come. Then sandalwood paste is taken and put on, often then certain signs are inscribed on this stone. You may think, what a mess, and of course it does make a mess, and after each offering, again water is poured, and it is washed away, and the next thing comes. I mean, long after the worship is over, they have to do a good clean-up in this temple, and sometimes we jokingly say that after a Hindu ritual, the place looks like a battlefield, because also fruits are offered, flowers are offered, placed sometimes on the top of this lingam, many, many things. There are some ceremonies where, for instance, 1,001 leaves from a holy tree, 1,008 leaves are offered and placed around this lingam. It's very elaborate and very extraordinary for a philosophy, a religious outlook that really looks to the absolute, that is beyond matter, beyond the physical universe, uses so much matter, so many materials, so many substances in its worship. And perhaps it would look strange to you to see milk and yogurt and honey and all these things poured onto a stone and washed away. These are good substances that you could eat. I'd just like to mention one more thing. When all these substances have been put on the stone, then there's always a little bit remaining in the original vessels. The last stage will be to take the remains of the yogurt, the remains of the milk, the remains of the sugar, etc., etc., and mix them all together with water, and that mixture is then poured on. You might think this is a little bit superfluous, because it's all got anyway washed away with water, but this is the form of the worship, a feeding of the stone in a strange way. Now, what is ritual really? So we have also rituals in the Christian church, the main one being the communion, the breaking of the bread and the wine. Are these things related with this very ancient ritual of pouring things on the stone? I could perhaps mention another Hindu ritual in passing. This is the fire ritual. You might have seen that, where a sacred fire is lit, and again similar substances are put into the fire with prayers and mantras, especially in that case seeds and grains, but also honey, sugar, ghee can go. All this is offered into the fire, it's burnt up. Again, you can think, do I really want to put my rice and my other seeds and things into a fire? What is really going on here? Now, a true ritual is always in harmony with cosmic law. A true ritual, I'm saying. And there's a stage in spiritual development where we begin to understand the connections between the macrocosm and the microcosm. The microcosm being us, or being our little world, and the great universe. We have many examples, even in our modern technology, of correspondences. I don't know if this is an absolutely exact analogy, but I often think we don't notice sufficiently the remarkable fact that enormous amounts of information can be stored in a microscopically small piece of matter. Whole operas, whole films, whole sequences of visual imagery and sounds can be compressed into, a disc, into very small spaces. Now this is again an absolute copy of what goes on everywhere in the universe. Something very, very great can be compressed or can have its corresponding process in a very small medium. And this is how ritual works. In a very small way, you do something that is nevertheless a key process in the cosmos, and thereby you stimulate that process. So all true rituals have been something that a human being does on the physical level, but it stimulates something on higher and subtler levels. But for this ritual really to happen, it happens the more you are in harmony with what you are doing. It is not just that the water reaches onto the stone, but the point is a human being who is a thinking, conscious, feeling, perceiving being does this, and all his forces, thinking, feeling, willing, and so on, are in harmony with this act that he's doing. This is then the magic that works it, that causes it to multiply, to work in the cosmos. But now these rituals which work out into the great cosmos also work deeply into us. It goes into the other direction. And one reason why we do rituals, and why my teacher is now very concerned to revive and continue these essential, these real rituals, is because we need them for ourselves. Not just to gain some kind of feeling for spirituality or to help us concentrate on something spiritual. That's not it at all. It is that by doing this in this way, we also enable certain processes to happen in us of a spiritual, chemical nature, I could put it like that. So, I would like to come now back to speak of the stone of the lingam. What is this actually, and why are stones? So, I think it would be very nice if we just placed our hands like this, as though we had a ball between them. Just imagine now, just relax your hands, but try and feel that you've got a ball between your hands, and you might actually begin to feel something, because the etheric energies, or the electromagnetic field around you, begins to densify, and you begin to feel something. Now I'd like it to be so that it's really round, so don't have it too far apart, have it so that it's a real round ball. And just turn your hands a little as though you're turning this ball. Now if it's really around a sphere, it'll have one centre. Now if we begin to draw our hands a little apart, we could imagine that this round sphere is becoming a little elongated. And let's say now in our imagination we elongate it till it becomes a perfect ellipsoid, or if you like an egg form, a bipolar structure with two centres, two focal points. And then let's now compress it again to a round, to a ball, to a one-centred entity. And then again draw it out until it becomes this egg, if you like, or this ellipsoid with the two focal points. And then we could, if we want, to go on and on stretching. This is actually an exercise in feeling our etheric forces. If you've already practiced in this way, it will be possible for you to let the hands come further and further apart, and you still feel an energy field between them. If you haven't practiced this, you might not get the sensation straight away, but you will do eventually, because we all have these forces. We just have to get used to freeing them. Then let it come back again. Let's bring it back to an ellipsoid. And then let's bring it back to a ball. And then let's compress it to a very small ball. Now, if you've got a good energy field between your hand, if you're really feeling something, then just take your hands and place them on the centre of your breast and let that energy flow into you. If you didn't feel anything at all, never mind, it's simply, it needs a little practice, but not a great deal. It's quite easy to do. Now I feel tempted at this point, I think I'm going to do it, to do that again, but not with our hands, but with sound. I hope you're all courageous enough to sing one tone. Now if you were in India, you must have heard of the sound Om, which they usually transcribe these days with the letters O-M. That's how it's normally, the Hindu letter, the Sanskrit letter, the sign, is usually transcribed as Om, and it's usually sung as Om, but it has variations. In actual fact, the actual Sanskrit sign is more like Om than Om, but it's usually transcribed as Om, and I'm going to ask us to sing it as Om. I'll give you a tone, hope it's one that suits everybody, and we'll just hum that tone for a minute to try and get it, and then we'll sing Om with a beautiful round mouth, a beautiful round O. We're going to sing this sphere that we made with our hands. We're going to have an audible sphere instead of an energetic sphere, a sphere in space. All right, off we go. Let me think of a tone. Can you hum that one? Of course the men will be an octave lower. Okay, we've got a whole lot of different tones. That's all right, they harmonise with each other. We'll just try once more, see if we can get one tone. If not, we'll settle for a harmony. that's also all right. It would still work. Okay, all the ladies alone. Now all the men join in with whatever you can manage. Okay, we'll take the sound that seems to be coming from Nigel and perhaps from Hugh. Is it your name, Hugh? Is that right? Yeah, okay. You were singing something like this. No.
Yeah, I think.
You were singing, no, you were right then, you were our tone. All right. Well, he can also sing that tone, that would also go. All right, once more the tone. Once more the...
Note I can put everybody out.
No, it doesn't put it out, it does harmonise. All right. Oh, that's a better tone you've got now, that's even a better harmony. Good. Now, I want us to really sing it Om, round, and after all, you may know that this tone contains all the tones. This is the original word, if you like, the sum total of all creative sounds. This is the creative power of God, the word of Brahma, if you like. So let's sing it with due reverence, if you like, or at least with interest, that it is something, it is a power. And if we really sing it with a real round O, we will actually feel in the space around. We've been doing this in our workshop, and we did it this morning, I believe, in our work, our meditation, and they did it very nicely. So we'll try a few times. Continue, that's very nice. Pause a moment, just feel the after effect. And now we're going to sing it in another way, the way it can also be sung, where this Om is more, as it were, spread out into three letters. Om can also be sung like this, a more fanned out, spread out. Om. Let's try this now. Yes, did you feel that was different? Had a different effect? How did it work for you? Much nicer, all right. Yes, yes.
It's as for me, I
Yes.
find it's a much nicer way of actually saying it seems more rounded.
Yes, all right, yeah. Mm-hmm. Let's just now sing Om 3 times and Aum 3 times again, and then I will continue speaking, all right? First Om 3 times. Yes. Don't know if you felt anything like this, that the Aum was a kind of opening out or enrichment of the Om. Now it says in the beginning of St. John's Gospel, in the beginning was the Word. You could ask yourself, well, if you're a child especially, what was there before the beginning? You know, my little brother and I, when we were about 4 and 5 years old, we used to ask each other such questions. If you like, what is there beyond the world? Oh, there must be a wall around the world. Then what's beyond the wall? Oh, well, there must be another wall, and so on. What was there before the beginning, before the creative process began? Now, of course, this is an unanswerable question, put like that, and we realize also that we have to step into a dimension where our normal flow of time, our time-space continuum, doesn't operate in that way. Otherwise you always get before, and so on. I often used to wonder as a child also, what if nothing ever was? We wouldn't even know. Supposing nothing, it was inconceivable. What was there before the beginning? What is there when there is nothing? I think I began my very first lecture here with a song from the cosmic tradition, which goes like this, from the words, where you find nothing more within you, there is the sun. Now, spiritual scientists know that at the center of the sun there is nothing or not anything. That if scientists really could send some spaceship to the center of the sun, they wouldn't come to this super hot fire which they expect, but they would come to nothing, to not anything. So we can understand it like this: the primal source of creation, the womb from which everything comes or came, because in this way we can't really use verbs with a tense, a past, a present or a future, is this great, I will say not anything, I won't say nothing, because it is in a way nothing that we can name, nothing that we can get hold of, nothing that is anything. It's perhaps just isness itself, if you like. And this can be conceived of in its most perfect way as a round, as a sphere. If we're going to think in a form, we're going to express it in some way, we'd have to express this in a sphere, perhaps, a unity, everything that is a unity, a oneness. That would be then a sphere. Now my teacher has drawn certain diagrams or certain pictures, really very beautiful, of the creative process. And he does beautiful chalk drawings on black paper. They're absolutely perfect, they're exquisitely beautiful. No smudges or correcting himself, because you can't do that in this form. And this sphere will just be the black paper, although there might be a hint, something is there. And round, surrounding this sphere, are very subtle, kind of violet weaving lines, a little bit like flames. And we say in our tradition that the violet flame, the violet ray, is the primal fire, the flame that is never extinguished. Now, we're talking a kind of picture language for something that is, but is not in our earthly space-time dimensions. So we have to use a picture language, but I'm not talking symbolically, talking of realities. I remember one place that I like to visit in the Himalayas, where you can sit on a high hill, a high mountain actually, and see the whole Garhwal range of the Himalayas. And on some of these high peaks there are very holy places, there are shrines. And I've often contemplated this line of snow peaks when we've had good weather and I could see them, and they look in a way very close. We're approaching the highest mountains in the world. They're not yet the very highest, those are to be found on the Nepal-Tibetan border. And this is a very happy, beautiful feeling. I don't know if any of you have done this. But the atmosphere, of course, is very clean, very pure. We're in a thinner air. The sky then is a rather deep violet blue. Something very pristine about this. And I had the feelings sometimes when I sat there that on these, or connected with these mountain peaks, were very, very high intelligences, high beings, we would say. And I felt that they were guardian beings. So I asked my teacher, I said, who are these beings here? And he said, they belong to the Razada Razim. They are guardian spirits that are placed there, especially to guard India. Now, it's pity there's no anthroposophist here, because Rudolf Steiner speaks of the 9 hierarchies, the 9 levels of beings, that creative beings that stand higher in evolution than the human being. There are 9 main divisions, as it were, the main stories of the house above. But these, the Razada Razim, are really above that. They are that which really directly surrounds what I have to call God, creative source, if you like. And so we can now picture this primal sphere of unity, this spring of all creation, as surrounded by these beings, the flames of God, if you like, or we also refer to them as the guardian of the secrets, the guardian of the divine secrets, the Razada Razim. I could say more about them, but I perhaps shall not digress for the moment. What I really want to stress is we think of this primal unity, this source of all creation, this great unity, as a sphere, and in some way the central creative power is invisibly, without dimension, in this sphere. Now, in the Hindu mythology it is said that Shiva, let us now identify the source with the god Shiva, to give it a name, that Shiva sat on Mount Kailash. He was the great ascetic, he was the great yogi, he is the great yogi, I shouldn't use the past tense in respect of him, sitting there, matted hair and all the rest of it, you might have seen pictures, in meditation, simply in meditation. Now, the woman who loves him, Parvati, the lady of the mountains, she wants to attract his attention. But how do you attract the attention of a meditating yogi? Because she wants to begin the world creative process. She wants to entice him out of his eternal meditation to come into activity, to begin his dance, to begin the dance of creation. And there are all kinds of legends and stories about how she does this. I don't need to repeat those for now. But what is this referring to? I could say like this: when the divine not anything, the divine silence, the divine source of all creation stirs, as it were, begins to stir out of its total unity, then this perfect sphere begins to move and to become gradually a bipolar being. You could say that God divides himself into God and Goddess. You could, if you like, say Parvati succeeds in taking Shiva out of his meditation and interesting him in the creation of the universe. Begins to revolve, to dance, the flames begin to dance around. Now my teacher has shown what actually happens then. He's actually made these very exquisite drawings. When this form, now I'm not speaking in terms of space and time, but of dimensions beyond that. When the sphere begins to become a bipolar, and we say that Shiva has divided himself into Shiva and Shakti, or the primal unity has become, if you like, Father God and Mother God, which would be the correct way to designate the Godhead. It's the Christian God the Father is one-sided. It would really be correct, the God Father Mother, primal ground, if you like. When this begins to happen, then you can describe, as it were, the Father aspect or the Shiva aspect inside this egg shape or this oval, within this most inward space, surrounded by the dancing flames of the highest beings around God, the Razada Razim, the guardians of the divine secrets. The masculine aspect would be portrayed as something like a sun, something that rays out, and rays are something that just goes straight out, light rays that go out. And the female aspect, the mother aspect, is portrayed as more in blue-green colours, forming a vessel, or not just one vessel, but many vessels to receive these rays. So this would, as it were, be the beginning of the cosmic dance, the dance of creation. And as the process goes on, this begins to multiply, so that in the upper half, where the sun is, the raying one, this itself also polarizes, and part of it becomes the sun, the masculine being, and a part of it becomes again the feminine receptive. And down below the same happens, but the opposite way round. Part of it becomes the feminine, part of it becomes the masculine. So you get here a sun, here, if you like, I'll call it, if you like, a moon-like being, because although it's blue, it's a kind of crescent moon shape, and the other way round down below, and something begins to arise in the middle. Now this process goes on. I showed some of these drawings to a young man, a student of physics. It's actually this young man, Tim, I mentioned to you, Jill. And he looked at it and he said, my goodness, that's a perfect picture of cell division. This is just how the cells divide. And this again shows the exact correspondence between the divine cosmic processes and the processes right into the macrocosm. Everything in us, everything in the physical universe, down to the last detail, is a reflection of the same cosmic processes. So this divine seed, I'll call it that now, this ellipsoid, unfolds in this way, and it unfolds a most intense and complex inner life. And as it goes on, it begins to elongate more and more and more, and becomes what we could now call a pillar. Now I have to go back to another legend from the Hindu mythology. I spoke of three gods, Brahma, Vishnu and Shiva, and this story is told by the Shivites, the ones who worship Shiva. They said that Brahma and Vishnu were having a quarrel about where this pillar of light, which is Shiva, ended. I can't remember the story in great detail, but they were quarrelling, and Vishnu was saying to Brahma, I bet you can't find the end of the pillar, which is Shiva, because by now in the cosmic process he had become a pillar of light. And Brahma was saying, well, of course I can. And so they said, all right. So I think one of them decided, I'll go down and see where it ends down there, and the other one said, I'll go up and see where it ends up there. Well, neither of them could find the end. They went on and on and on and on and on and on, up and down. And I think one of them, it was Brahma, in the end got fed up with this and came back to the middle and said, have you found the end of the pillar? And Vishnu had to say no. And Brahma said, well, as a matter of fact, I did, but he wasn't telling the truth. And there were certain consequences to that, which I can't remember. But the main point I want to say is that this pillar of light is conceived of then when this seed begins to elongate. This pillar of light is considered to be endless and infinite. Now, what is the significance of this pillar of light? When the primal egg or seed or lingam, ellipsoid, begins to elongate into a pillar, that signifies the beginning of the way, the space, the journey into space and time. That this is the pillar that forms the way. In a way, it's the first dimension. It's the first beginnings of actually forming of cosmic spaces. So when Jesus Christ, or Yeshua as I should say, said, I am the way, he was also meaning this, that which out of the dimensionless begins to move and to create into space and time. So in a very simple way, that's the beginning, that's how creation is conceived and described in the Hindu mythology, and what is in St. John's Gospel is in absolute accordance with this. I could just pause here for a moment and say, what in us is in the dimension of space and time, and what, if anything, in us also lies outside this dimension? Do you have any feeling for that? Whether you are atheist or religious? Yes.
Out of space and time is the spiritual.
Yes. Do you experience that in any way?
I do when I'm meditating.
Yeah, right, yes. How is that possible when you meditate?
There's almost a sense of not being aware of the physical senses, but being aware.
Yeah, yeah.
It's the only way I can explain it. It's a very simple way.
Yeah,
it's the only way I can explain it.
That's good. Not being aware of the physical senses, the body, the flow of time, space, but being aware. And you are aware, and you are aware that you are aware. Yes. And this is where we are approaching that very centre in us, which is also without dimension. Now what I was coming to in all this is that this primal lingam, I'm not saying now the sphere, but the lingam, which has the two poles and which is this creative space, this creative seed of God has its exact replica in us. We have a correspondence to this in what I've called in this lecture the divine seed. This is that in us which is in the image of God, which is given to us, and which is, now I'm saying this, I have to be a bit careful here, I would say is in us, or at least belongs to us. I won't even say it is in us at this point. Now I have to come to the origin of the human being, because we weren't always there. There were other world spheres, there were other planets, there were other galaxies, but the human being as such was not always present in the universe. We have our evolution, we have our history, we belong to space and time. I'm talking nevertheless in terms of many incarnations. See, our real biography, as it were, began many incarnations ago. And let us say, for the moment, because Kay is not here, that it began with the evolution of the Earth planet. If she was here, I'd have to go further back, because Rudolf Steiner writes of previous incarnations of our planet also. We should think now that the human being has a double origin. Just as in this incarnation we have, in a certain sense, a double origin, in that we have a mother and a father. We can't be born or created out of just one of them. It takes a two that has to unite. Now, I've often given this image to help understand what is the relationship between the cosmic father and the cosmic mother. I'm going to repeat this because it's the best image that I know. If a child is going to come into this world, man and woman have to unite in a certain way. Now that union, the essential aspect of that union, can be very, very short. I don't know how long it takes for the sperm actually to meet the ovum, but it's a very short space of time. It doesn't take very long to beget a child. And then the man, if he wants to, can leave, depart, and never appear again. He can go to South America or the North Pole or whatever. He's done whatever he has to do. But the woman is landed with 9 months of pregnancy, has to carry this child, and it is out of the woman's substance and the woman's organism that the child is built up. She offers her substance. She offers the process of growth. She offers the possibility that this seed, implanted by the man, and again already the egg, the ovum, already has a surrounding quality. The sperm, which is much, much smaller than the ovum, is much more like the raying quality, received, and then this is unfolded over 9 months and the child is born. But I've mentioned this before. When that child is born, it can just as much resemble the father as the mother. Although the father's part, let us say, took a split second, and the mother's part took 9 months. Which means that in this seed was already the whole blueprint, the whole information. Well, not the whole, because the mother's information is also there. The child is a product of both in that sense. But this is an exact correspondence to the male motherly part, the receptive part, which unfolds. Now, why do Shiva and Parvati, or God Father and God Mother, create in this way? The fatherly principle gives the plan, the structure, the law, the basic dimensions. The motherly principle weaves around this and unfolds it and creates the forms on this basis. The father, in that sense, is the timeless, simply what is. The mother, of course, is that which unfolds in time. And that's why also this relationship 1 to 9 is so important. If you like, the masculine role, the father represents the 1 and the woman represents the 9. Now, I forgot to mention that when I was talking about the Hindu temple and the lingam, that usually the lingam is portrayed not only embedded in the yoni, the female organ, but also usually there's a cobra wound around the lingam, spiraling up and with a hood coming over. Some variation like this. In our temple it's like this. There is the cobra and the hood standing up, but on the lingam itself, spiraling upwards, certain images are carved. And these are little diagrams, cryptograms you could say, representing the whole process of human evolution. So again we have a picture in the lingam itself, the male principle, of the timeless, that which simply is. And in the cobra, or that which spirals around, we have the course of time, that which unfolds in time. Now I could explain our double origin simply like this. There is a divine seed which is now, and now is always now, now. Now is never before or after. This is the eternal seed, the eternal Shiva principle. And then there is that which unfolds in time, in the course of time. It takes time for unfolding, for forms to be created, for forms to dissolve. This is the great time process, cycles of time. And we are this. In terms of our body, but also of our life energies, our feelings, our thoughts, the events of our life, we are time beings. We've all lived through quite a span of time, just taking this incarnation. Where is all that? Is it important? Does it belong to us? Are we that? Now we know, of course, that by the time we reach a certain age, the time processes, the events of our lives, have already imprinted them on our face. We have become changed physically through the course of time. The body ages, but the body also ages in a way that it carries an imprint, an effect of all that we've lived through. That's a very important question. What do I do with my biography? Maybe I've had a very good life, a very happy life, a very productive life. Maybe I've had a life up to now with all kinds of problems, all kinds of difficulties. Maybe the whole aspects of my life I'd like to wipe out. I wish I could do over again. Or maybe there are parts of my life I regret because they're past and I'd like to continue them. There's all this is there. Now if we look at the human being, we could say, how big are you? Now if we take this concept of size to include not only the physical size, but also the size in terms of time, then the human being is enormously big. Even as far as the physical, we have a physical body of so many dimensions, we're so high, we're so wide and so on. But we also know, if we've studied spiritual things a little or had certain experiences, that we consist, even in terms of space, of more than the physical body. We consist also of subtler energy fields that surround and penetrate the body. And the question is, how big are these? Well, now there are very many of them, but one can say as a provisional measure, if I take my arm and stretch it up and then circle it round me, roughly a kind of boundary exists in this dimension. But that isn't the end, that's just the end of a more dense dimension. In fact, we extend in an enormous long way into space. In a certain sense, I could put it like this. If you look at a star, let us say the planet Jupiter or Sirius, something of you is reaching right out to that star. Something of you can extend into cosmic dimensions. So this is now in terms of space, how big is the human being? When I do a course on developing the etheric forces, as I'm going to do next weekend, because a lot of our work is connected with the realizing of these parts of our being and learning to use them rightly, we begin to experience this. Everybody begins to suddenly experience, I'm much bigger, much greater, I'm expanding. And if you've begun to meditate, perhaps you've also had such experiences, you begin to feel these other parts of your being. So in terms of space, in terms of the space that we occupy or influence or inhabit, we are all very enormous. In terms of time, if we could, as it were, make a body out of time, and we do in a certain sense have a time body, a body or an energy sheath that it contains, as it were, our whole life, the time rolled up into an energy sheath. This time stretches back all the years of our life. It stretches back to our time in the womb. It stretches back to the time when we were in the spiritual world. It goes back to our previous incarnations, back. You can think infinitely far back. How far can you think? And so on. This is the size of the human being. This is the one aspect of our origin. But on the other, this very essence, which is beyond time and space, which is actually of the nature of this primal lingam, or this primal seed that I described, that is the tiniest that you can imagine. That is tinier, more small than the smallest atom. It is the smallest, it is the subtlest, it is the most concentrated. There you are the smallest. There you are the shortest in time. You are only now. However long it takes to be now, you are simply the lightning flash. So we exist, we live suspended between the eternal moment, now, and the whole course of time. This is the true polarity or duality in us. The eternal moment, the eternal, the timeless, the dimensionless of the Father, and the unfolding in time with its great memory of the Mother. And these two aspects in us are, first of all, represented by that which is connected with the top of our head, the Father, connected with, but not the same as the 1,000-petal chakra, and the mother pole, which is in the reproductive area, and encoded especially into this area is the memory of the whole of Earth evolution. The great mother memory is deeply embedded, deeply encoded in us here. And we live in a good tension or a good exchange between these two poles. That is really life, existing between these two poles. So, how did we look before we were born, and how will we look after we've died? Because we know that we lay aside the physical body, death is that. Whatever I am, if I am anything, leaves the physical body, and these more subtle or invisible entities presumably move on. For those of you who've had experience of death of other people, you may have noticed that the body dies, the functions stop, but it doesn't seem straight away that the person has left. Slowly one has the feeling that that person has left. Often it feels as though the person is around their body. And in most traditions they say it takes about 3 days for the life energies, the life energy structure, to really leave that physical body. If you studied spiritual science, you know that it says something like this, that gradually then this energy sheath, this life energy sheath, also dissolves into the cosmos. And some time after that, quite a considerable time after that, our whole accumulation as a soul being of thoughts, of feelings, of speech and all these things, that also dissolves. So what is left? What is it that goes from incarnation to incarnation to incarnation? What is left is a kind of, is this divine eternal seed, the original divine seed, and what this soul has been able to accumulate on earth as knowledge, experience, but it's become so purified and so taken back to its essence that it is also now independent of these bodies, these sheaths. It's like a kind of essence. So some traditions, they refer to this more or less as the causal body. I'll come back to that. But I have to say something more about this seed, I think, now at this point, before I elaborate that further. Were we always this seed? Did we always have this seed? How is it in respect of our double origin? Now the earth was created over, of course, immense periods of time, and spiritual science teaches us, and perhaps our ordinary science is coming to this, I don't know, that a planet arises first it is first, if you like, pure energy, and condenses gradually to, if you like, the physical planet. So our planet unfolded in this way, And the human being was, as it were, planned and projected by God and by the gods. By gods, I mean the angels, archangels, archai, all these different hierarchies, or in the Indian system, the devas, and so on. By these different creative beings who stand in their evolution higher than the human being and are not perceptible to our physical senses. They worked on the earth and they prepared the way of the human being. They prepared this. Where was the divine seed? If you like, that was still with God, or it was not there on the earth. A certain physical basis was gradually prepared. I'm having to make this very simple. I'm trying to make it simple. Gradually, some kind of primitive forms arose, the forerunners, if you like, of our present form. Various kinds. It went through many, many, many stages. Now, evolution goes like this. The gods, the creative beings, carry out a work. They carry out a work of creation, and then at certain key points in that process, the divine source itself intervenes and gives a quite new input into the process. Now, there was a very, very key moment. My teacher says it was about between 15,000 and 9,000 years BC, before Christ, where the divine seed was really implanted into this structure that was the basis of the forerunner, or the early form of the human being. And that this divine seed was, in a magical spiritual process, brought, enchanted down into connection with this basic organism that was becoming the human being. And this was done with the help of all the gods, with mantras, with song and all the rest of it. This seed was created and brought in connection with the human being. I'm saying in connection, but I'm not saying so much directly in the human being, but as it were, every human being, every human organism was equipped potentially with this seed. It was not yet so far that most organisms could directly receive it in the organism, but in connection with it, like it's waiting for you. It's a bit like a bank balance that's waiting for you. If you're a young person, when you're 21, you can go and collect the cash that's been left for you. It's a little bit like that. It's been left there, ready for you. Each person has it, but you don't necessarily have it just yet. It's, if you like, waiting above you. So this is the essential. Every human being is endowed with this, but not every human being is yet able to embody this. And this is the great diversity of evolution. But the goal of evolution is that this divine seed will more and more totally enter the human organism, right into the physical organism, and from there will begin to transform this organism into a higher form. Now, in the course of evolution, there have always been beings higher than the human beings who have not completed their own evolution satisfactorily, who have lagged behind in their evolution, just as there are with us, of course, and some of these have become what we actually call opposing beings. They've brought hindrances in the way of evolution. I don't want to go just at the moment into the whole question of evil and sick beings. I just want to say for the moment, these beings are and were there and are still active, and for their own reasons do not wish that the human being achieve the goal of evolution. They want to hinder that we achieve this, because if we do achieve it, the human being will become quite another being. You know, Jesus said, "Do you know that you are gods?" He said this to his disciples. The human being potentially is a creator being, a creator God. We will be the next hierarchy after the angels. We will become the next creator generation. But we are not that yet. But this is our evolutionary goal, and it will happen through the seed being able to be fully assimilated into the human organism and able to reform and develop this. It will be a spring in evolution. When somebody achieves this, they become actually, even within the physical body, they become a godlike being. I mean, Jesus Christ himself embodied this process in his whole death and resurrection. This was a process he was, as it were, in advance preparing the way for humanity. He wasn't doing it to impress you, that so that you sign on and join his church. He was doing it, this is the prototype. This is the way of evolution. This is the way for all human beings. So, some of these opposing beings actually stand very high in hierarchies, and they also have a great wisdom and knowledge. Now, I have to speak in a way that sounds very naive, sounds a bit like science fiction. I don't know how else to do it, but I am referring, nevertheless, to facts, but which I have to put in our language for dimensions that really lie beyond our mentality. And it goes like this. God, the creator being, wanted to ensure that this divine seed could not be stolen or taken away. And because it is a part of God, it cannot be, actually. This is the one part of the human being that is indestructible. And he protected this creative seed. He surrounded it, we say, by a blue sphere. Now, I don't know if any of you have read in some of the yoga books or even have seen in meditation what we sometimes call a blue pearl. Certain people in certain Indian traditions do see this. It seems that certain spiritual paths lead to a vision of this. It doesn't mean that it's a more advanced path than any other. It just means that's the way it happens. Like some routes to Everest will let you see the peak in advance, and other routes don't let you see it, but each route might be equally good. But you can actually see sometimes what's called this blue pearl. It's a very, very beautiful spiritual colour. It's not an earthly colour. And within it you can see something like a star. Very tiny, very subtle. And within this star a kind of darkness. Kind of dark, indescribable point. But it can be seen. It is there. And some describe them, some yogis describe how certain experiences with this blue pearl. But it is a protected seed, protected by this blue, and no opposing being can directly get at this. So what they do is they try everything possible to set up conditions on earth whereby we will not be aware of it, or we will be distanced from it, or we will not be able to take it fully into our organism. This is their aim. And I shall come on to speak now of the kind of things they do and of the kind of things we can do to ensure a right development. Because we are in a time now when this blue shield should begin to open. We are in a time now where it is intended that each human being take in fully this divine seed and allow it to unfold and allow it to transform us. If we can do this, if large numbers of human beings can achieve this, then we will be able to transform this earth in a very short time and to heal its sicknesses, because we will have become endowed with higher faculties. And this is what lies before us at this moment. We are in this time. So this blue shield is there. Where is it? If it is not in your organism, where is it? Now, one of the great deeds of Jesus Christ, of Yeshua, who was a very high master, the highest master of his time, the highest developed human being, and he could directly, at one point in his life, at the age of 30, receive the divine impulse, the divine creator source, directly into his organism. So he became thereby what we call a son of God. He became a divine incarnation. He was then able to act for the whole of humanity, and he, as it were, installed, it sounds funny, I have to say, a ray of light in each human being that connects the human being on the one hand with the sun and on the other hand with the centre of the earth. Now, a lot of people now and a lot of different groups know about this. There are a lot of schools of meditation, especially in the West, but also a little bit in India, where you meditate a ray of light or a pillar of light. Could be both. But there is actually a light connection, a connection of light, an unbreakable light thread. You could compare it, if you like, to a laser, we call it sometimes the diamond ray, which is unbreakable and connects each human being with the divine. Now, this was a special task of Jesus Christ. He installed this in every human being. And this is one of the mysteries of the St. John's Gospel. The St. John's Gospel is particularly concerned with this I am ray, with the I am of the human being. And so you find these different sayings: I am the bread of life, I am the light of the world, I am the door. These are all different approaches to this mystery of the ray and of the divine seed which is in this ray. So if the divine seed, the lingam, the blue pearl, the blue god, my teacher calls it, because he says inside this seed is now not just a divine seed, but already a formed being, a godlike being. He says, if this is not directly in you yet, it is in your ray. It is in descending. And there's been all kinds of help to enable this to come. So our task now is to enable this seed to enter into us. That's the first part of the task. But only some of the work is done when this is within us. Some people have it already within them. Others are very near to this. Others still have quite a lot to do. On the other hand, if one person achieves this fully, it begins to have a chain reaction, a good chain reaction. It, stimulates this in other people. Where does it enter into us? It enters into us through the top of the head, through this point which in the young child is open, the fontanelle. It enters through the great spiral which we call the thousand-petaled chakra. It enters there, and its dwelling place, so to speak, is in the very centre of the head, between the pineal and the pituitary gland, in this space there. Now you can find this space, you can sense it, perhaps you have already. It can be found also if you take a vertical line from here down to the base of the throat, and you take a horizontal line through the temples, and you take a horizontal line more or less through the back of the skull where the spinal cord enters the head, and the Arjuna Chakra behind the point, the root of the nose. Where these three lines meet, there is this spot where the place for this seed is to be found. It can also then move to a place behind the breast, a place behind the navel, but the main seat of it is there. One can stimulate this space with certain very simple exercises. For instance, even we could just do this now, just for a little break. If we are upright and we very slowly nod our head, keeping it in this plane, quite gently, as though we're saying, yes, 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 I understand. If we just nod with great sensitivity a few times, you may already begin to feel something like a condensation or a sensation somewhere in your head. You may or you may not, doesn't matter. And then after a while you come back to the upright and you pause for a minute and you feel. And then you can turn your head from side to side, looking to the right, looking to the left, but in an absolute horizontal plane. The chin never changes its level. You can do this with open eyes or with closed eyes, very sensitively, very much with feeling. And then you can come back to the center. And again you might feel a slight sensation, as though you're beginning to sense where the middle of your head is. And then the third movement you can do is you lean your head onto your right shoulder, as though you had a cushion there. So you were trying to bring your ear to the right shoulder. Come upright and do the same on the left. You lean onto your left shoulder, but keeping absolutely in this plane. This is what's important. Very sensitively, very gently. Please don't overdo these exercises. If you want to do these things, do them, but just a minute or two, because you could damage something very delicate if you overdo it. And then you come back to the center. And then you can, to finish off, do gentle circling movements. There are other things I could show you, but perhaps this is enough for the moment. You circle one way round, say twice, I think that's enough. And then you circle in the other direction. And then come upright. And you might, or might not yet, but later perhaps, begin to have some slight sensation of something in the center of the head. But I will give you something more about this at the end, something more that it's very good to do. Now that is the one work that we had to do. Oh, I must also again make another, not diversion, but another insert. I did ask, what does the human being look like after death and before birth? What is it then that actually, having laid aside these different sheaths, the etheric and the astral and so on, when we really are purely in the spiritual world, and before we descend again to incarnation, that is, we dip down again from the dimensionless down into space and time. Can you describe the human being? Do we have arms, legs, face, etc.? No, we don't. We are in that time simply this seed, which may or may not have fully incarnated in this life, but still we are simply this seed, this little spark, this star of light. And surrounding this we are a great field of energy. Or at least, even that I have to modify. I have to put it like this. This seed which we are projects from itself sphere after sphere after sphere of transparent light, a bit like an onion. But these also tend gradually to go back into the center after death. But when we are coming towards incarnation and in life itself, we are this star with these spheres of light that are projected outwards. They say to 9 levels. Some people call this the causal body. I'm not quite sure if that's a really exact definition, but these light sheaths get projected out. There are thousands and thousands of them, but there are, as it were, 9 main layers, so to speak. This we basically are. Now when a child is going to be conceived, let us say when from above the child is planning which father and which mother it wants to unite for its incarnation, then, because we have to talk from a dimension that isn't in space and time, working into space and time, but it works like this. The father's seed, the sperm, is making its way towards the woman, the ovum, the egg, and the divine seed, the very core of the human being, as it were, rides on the sperm. They say this is one meaning of the symbol of the young man riding on the dolphin. It rides on the sperm. The central core of the child, incoming child, connects itself with the father organism. And the surrounding spheres of light that have been projected out of this, up to 9 layers of light spheres that are projected out of this one sphere, they come from this, these penetrate the mother organism. And then these two come together. So the 9 spheres of light begin to work into that part that works in time and space and builds and forms the motherly, and the very core of the human being, the I am, rides as it were on the sperm, on the seed principle, and penetrates that. Now our divine seed, whether it's inside or outside, it projects these spheres, these transparent light spheres, and these become the basis on which is then projected all our other spheres, our etheric body and so on, our astral body, but this is the basis of what we are. Let's now, for a moment, take a picture. My teacher is very happy when we contemplate the stars, and he often says, look at the night sky and choose a very small but very beautiful sparkling star that appeals to you, and contemplate this star surrounded by darkness. Make a relationship with this star, because this will stimulate that star which is at the center of your divine seed. And it is very good sometimes to contemplate a star with the black surroundings. The other thing he likes us to contemplate very much, among other things, is the full moon. And we all know how beautiful the full moon looks in the sky, and if it's a clear night, around the full moon is a beautiful but very, very delicate and subtle radiance. And sometimes different rainbow formations, different subtle colours. It's very good for us to contemplate this, because this stimulates a very essential process in us. For the seed to enter into us, to enter into our organism, it is necessary that we come more and more and more to our centre, that we free ourselves from all kinds of foreign influences, that we act truly out of our own inmost will, that we overcome in us all simply automatic behaviour, and a lot of our thinking, 99% of our thinking, most people, is very automatic. You think what is splurged out to you from the TV, from the newspapers. You take up the opinions of those around you. You're full of the opinions of your parents, your teachers, your influences, advertising. The whole mental world is pretty much conditioned and dictated by the outside world. Now, the more you break that down and see through it and take responsibility for your own mental and emotional space, the more chance you have that this seed can take up residence in you. It also means, and this is very basic to the spiritual path, and you'll find this expressed in different ways in all the traditions, it is necessary that we free ourselves from all identifications. Now, the human being loves to be someone, and we have to give up being someone. Usually we like to be not just one someone, but very many different someones. But there are a lot of people also who have maybe 1, 2, 3, 4 or 5 main identifications. I'll give you a few very simple, clear examples. We were working at this in our workshop yesterday, where we were looking at the way people stand and walk and move, because the way you move your body often reveals what you identify yourself with. Let us say you are a supermodel or a film star. Then your identification is with your body and with the beauty of this body. And most of these ladies then have problems when the body begins to be less beautiful, no longer to support this identification. There are very evil identifications in America, especially, but in the Western world, that's extreme in America, where the idea is subtly, or not very subtly, injected into young female humanity that you have to be a certain shape and size, and if you are not this certain shape and size, you are not worthy to be a human being. And this is a terrible identification that they load on people, and these young women have terrible trouble getting free of this. It's something that's imposed from outside. Or you have a certain position in life, or you are successful at something. That's fine. Position, success, these are not wrong things, but they become hindrances if you identify with them, if you think, I am that. If you do something well, if you are successful, you can enjoy this, we can be thankful, we can take it as nourishment for our life. But when we start thinking, I am this, we start hanging millstones round our neck. We prevent the entry of that diamond clear, not anything, which means we are everything, this perfect, transparent, if you like, extract of the whole cosmos. We prevent that from being in us at our core. So this divine seed is there, but we have to build the corresponding receptacle for it. Just like the lingam is there, and it has its yoni, its receptacle. So that is the first thing, to find our centre and to work out of this, to free ourselves from all kinds of artificial structures which we acquire, which society imposes on us, etc., etc. Now, this is one reason why people fear spirituality, and there's still a great fear of spirituality in the world, because somewhere along the line people sense, I have to let go of a lot of ideas about myself. And this is very, very, very hard, because we all need somewhere a feeling that we are. And we are, of course, but we are not this, that, or the other. A very vast area of false identification is with our problems, with our sickness. This is one of the biggest hindrances to healing. However much pain and trouble my problems cause me, don't you dare take them away from me, otherwise what will I be? very simply put. I think we know this syndrome more or less. I've met it very, very many times. We can even find traces of all these things in ourselves. We must be aware of that. Don't identify with our problems. We are not our problems. We are not our sickness. The less you identify with it, the more easily you can free yourself from it. So this is the one great work we have to do. I think I want to stay on this point just a little longer. Where can we find evidence that the human being really is this? How do you know I'm not just talking beautiful theories? This brings me back to the question of nourishment. There's one great saint in India. He's no longer living, but he think he died in about 1950. He was called Ramana Maharishi, and he was a very pure being, and there happened to be a lot of very beautiful photographs of him. I've seen very many of them. A very, very beautiful face, very calm, very tranquil, with very lovely eyes. And I remember one of his more famous pupils used to say, "It was enough for me to go and sit in his presence and to meet his gaze, his eyes. That was a complete nourishment that filled me, and from this I also realized my divine identity." Now, what are human eyes? They are different, after all, from animals' eyes, from a cat, a dog, a lion, etc. I don't know if you've noticed this. There's something more focused. Animal eyes can be very beautiful. It's lovely to look in the eyes of an animal, but they don't have that which is in the human eye. Now, what is really in the human eye? What do we see when we look at a human being? We are looking at and we are seeing something that cannot be seen. And that is the black pupil of the eye, the blackness at the centre. This is where the gaze is. It's not in the iris, the coloured part, or in the white, the cornea. It's in the very centre, the black. That looks at it, and you know when I'm looking at you, and you know when you're looking at me. And they could have very good reasons for not wanting to look at you, especially if I've just stolen your purse or something like that. Then I want to avoid your gaze. There's nothing really more powerful or more beautiful than the human gaze. And yet it is this invisible light of the eye. We all have this experience. We all know it. Now this points exactly to, this is a pure and accurate and absolute reflection of this divine reality, the divine seed, which is not anything, and yet which is everything. Now it is said that a human being can lie, can tell lies, can even make his face and his gestures so that they misrepresent the truth. People who are very clever at deceiving others. But this centre part of the eye cannot lie. The pupil of the eye light, that cannot deceive another human being. This is the centre of truth in us. This is where we are. This divine seed in us is truth, is what is. So you can see that I'm talking about coming more and more and more to truth. So we are truth, for this seed to enter into us. That is half the work. The other half is to work with all of that in us which goes through time, which lives on this earth. Now we have experiences from morning till night. Through all our waking hours, events are happening to us of one kind or another. What we need to do is to take out of this stream of events that which was important, that which was valuable, that which was good, that which we could unfold as a capacity, as a virtue, as a quality. And we need to give this as nourishment to the divine seed. Now I spoke about the moon and the beautiful aura of the moon. Why is that a good image for us? Because if you say for the moment the moon represents the divine seed, what we are doing is building an aura around the moon. We have to build an aura, an energy field around this divine seed, which corresponds in its vibration with that which is inside the seed. Just as the aura, the radiance around the moon, corresponds to the moon and is in a way a certain reflection of it. So our whole inner constellation of thinking, of feeling, of willing, our whole inner soul life gradually has to attain that vibration, that level, that quality, which corresponds to what is in the center. It is a nourishment for this, so that this seed can unfold, this blue capsule, this blue pearl, can open, and the gods can live in this organism of time and space. The energy field around has to correspond to it. It has to be nourishment for it. So we, as it were, have to bring this nourishment daily of that which we could unfold in terms of our thoughts, our feelings, our capacities, our deeds. This essence of our earthly experience is what we offer to create this energy field, if you like, this aura around the seed, to the point where the seed can open and live in this atmosphere. If the seed were to open in the atmosphere that we normally have, it would suffocate, would not be able to live, so it remains closed. Just like for the child to be born, there has to be good air that the child can breathe. Similarly, when our divine being is born, there has to be an atmosphere in us in which it can live. So this is the task of nourishment. Now, we have to develop these capacities, we have to so purify and gather our experiences. We have to create a climate in us that is so pure, that is so healthy, that is so serene, so peaceful, and so on. And this has to actually then be given to the seed. Now, this is a kind of spiritual, alchemical process. It's not, I can't exactly say how you do it. But if you carry out rituals, such as that which I described at the beginning, giving to the lingam, the water, the milk, the yogurt, the sugar and all these things, because this has a cosmic correspondence, it can trigger this process. Now we say that if you give pure water to the lingam, this is the pure water of truth. It is also the pure water of life. We also think of this pure water as water from a mountain spring, very clear and containing many minerals. It is the purest extract of the mineral kingdom. You offer this to the lingam. Then it's also a custom, I forgot to mention that, quite often they offer rice water, water that has cooked rice. They offer that. This is then the water that has been permeated by the plant kingdom. Then we offer milk, the water that has been through the animal kingdom. This represents more now our feeling world, whereas the rice water represents more our life energies, and the pure spring water can represent, if you like, the purest extract of our physical body. And then all the other substances have similar significances. So by doing this outwardly, with full devotion, full concentration, full good intention, it also stimulates that process inwardly of creating this luminous court, this luminous atmosphere around the seed. So this is our most important task. This is what we need to do on earth today. Whatever religious or non-religious path we follow, it's not a question of religion anymore, but of actually carrying something out. This is what its real aim would be. Oh yes, I'll come to my pictures for a moment. These are just kind of improvisations I did, but they have in it this seed principle, and they're all trying to indicate in some way that the entire creation is contained within the seed. But on the other hand, it is also projected outwards. There's another picture which I've just sold, so I can't bring it, where it has rather, for me at least, rather smoky forms arising, and rather, I called it incense of the soul, because there again, there's a direct correspondence between air, smoke, and our feelings. And when we light incense, in a certain way, we are purifying the atmosphere. We are putting a symbolic representation of our feelings being purified and rising up like smoke does. So we have to describe super-sensible processes in terms of sensible, of symbols in time and space. There's a practice that is very recommended in anthroposophical circles, which is that every day before we sleep we look back on the day and we see the events of life. Sometimes they say do it in reverse order, but just go through the events of the day. That's a very good exercise to do. One can do it also from different points of view. One can do it from what I have learned today, but also, and this is very valuable, what was precious, what was special, what was beautiful, what have I attained today? Make this conscious. Then there are actual meditations where we carry out this worship of the lingam that I described, but we do it purely inwardly. And we gradually begin to feel, as we actually begin to incorporate this seed, we actually begin to feel that we are offering to this central seed in us, that we are pouring the water, we are pouring the milk. Or it says, also in some versions, we are taking the sacred oils and anointing the inner lingam with this, the sacred oils representing the purest experiences of our senses. So I think that's actually all I have to bring to you tonight. That's the essence of it, the nourishment of our divine essence and the goal of human evolution. I think it would be very good now if I let you make any comment or ask any questions that you want about this. These are very good things, and a lot of very positive and helpful things are finding their way into the world. Now, I don't know if any of you know the great teacher Omram Mikhail Ivanov.
He's had a talk by Gene.
Oh, yes.
Who incidentally gives her apologies for unable to be here. But she gave us a wonderful talk.
Yes. Well, he gives wonderful teachings on how we can connect very everyday events like taking a shower with higher forces. And if you make that connection, it begins to work. If you think you are the lingam and the shower, the water is pouring through you, you will purify yourself on other levels than just the physical. And again, all these different water features are, just as a waterfall or a wonderful mountain stream where the water flows over the lingam, this also stimulates that in us. It is an image of the same reality. Or again, the fountains. You see, these are also, many things were also introduced originally, sometimes by spiritual masters in a very surreptitious way, into our ordinary life to stimulate these processes in us.
Look at the waterfall at Chatsworth House. I don't know if you've ever seen that, but it goes down for many steps, and it's amazing. It's really the most amazing waterfall.
Yes.
So cleansing.
Yes. I know that there's some very creative series of numbers, 1, 3, 7, 9. All these different numbers have their different significances, and that 108 is part of the creative process in a special way that I actually don't know. Of course, it will be connected with 9 and 12, with the 8 and the 1. All these things have to be quite correct.
I'm not quite sure how, but it's got something to do with the equinoxes. It links into time itself.
Yes.
Cosmic time.
Yes.
The 25,000 year cycle.
Mm-hmm.
The 108. I can't remember how.
No.
But it's like a fraction of it.
Yes.
And there's 108 names of the goddess.
Yes.
In Hindu.
Yes. There are 108 names. There are also 1,008 names. It's also 1,080 names. I don't remember. But there are all these numbers that are so important. And then there are 108 seeds on a mala, and so on. So it's a very important number in that way, yes. And these 108 or 1,080 names are recited of the god, of the goddess. Very different ones, different series. It takes about 2 hours to recite the 1,080 names of Shiva. We do that on Mahashivaratri, the great festival of Shiva. Yes.
Mm-hmm. Did you also want to say something about, you said you would say something about what shadow side beings are doing purposely to try to keep people off their spiritual path or not, from succeeding in ascending in this lifetime?
So there's a great deal one could say about that. I don't know where one starts with that question, but I think the main aspect, the important thing to say for the moment, is that if the human being attains the goal of evolution, as we should be doing right now, then these beings will lose their power base. They will also lose their energy source, because in the worst cases, the worst scenario, what they want is to take human substance, human beings, as their material, as their food, as their slaves. They don't want us to be thinking free. We can see many examples. I mean, I don't want to become too political right now, but we can see in the world right now that there are very many attempts to subvert human consciousness, human freedom, to flood us with all kinds of material goods that we don't need, simply that we're distracted, that we get more and more entrapped in consumerism, etc., etc. We all know these things, because they want human beings to be in a position where they can be used, where they can be manipulated. And this is totally against the divine will. The divine will for human beings are free, but a good creator spirit. What is a good spirit? A good spirit is one who works for the whole, not just for a limited section of the universe at the cost of the rest.
I agree with that actually, and I think the only way that we're actually going to get through that is not by actually, because being a yoga teacher, I noticed that, you know, you can talk to people and you can try and bring them through into thinking like that, but you're not going to work like that. The only way you're going to do that is set by example. I always said to my teachers that if I come in and I've got great respect for my pupils with a bottle of beer in one hand and a cigarette in the other, I mean, I don't need to do anything, but I would already create a terrible barrier between my pupils and myself. But if you go in with not just love and truth and honesty and all things you know about, but just showing by example what you should be doing, that has more of an effect than actually opening your mouth or saying anything. Because that they pick that up and think, yes, that's the way it should be done. That's what I like about that person.
Yes.
And I think that in many ways that's the only way we're going to get through.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
What do you think of the concept of bodhisattvas putting energy out? Is that throughout the world, which is causing a change in people's consciousness? Do you believe that happens?
Oh yes, definitely. Yes, I do. The bodhisattva is one who has attained the goal of human evolution and is no longer obliged by karma or any other reason to incarnate again on the earth, but chooses freely to do so, to serve, to help the rest of humanity and the rest of creation. And this is very graphically described in the Mahayana Buddhist tradition. That is the Buddhism that really arose around the time and after the time of Jesus Christ, not so much the original Buddhism, where the nuance was more to liberate oneself from this earth, full stop. But really that whatever you have attained, you use that now to help your fellow creatures. And then it is very, very graphically and beautifully described in quite another way by Rudolf Steiner, which he calls it then the meeting with the greater guardian of the threshold, where the pupil who has reached that stage where he or she is entitled to remain in heaven, as it were, to remain in higher dimensions, higher spheres, is not obliged to incarnate again, but is invited, if he wishes, to continue to help his fellow creatures, and then even his evolution or her evolution will go on and on and on, whereas if you decide just to stop in heaven, you remain perhaps in a state of a certain blessedness, but your evolution doesn't go on. But now, especially in our time, the bodhisattvas, the masters, and I'm meaning at the moment the same thing if I say master or bodhisattva, they are very, very active, very much helping humanity, very concerned with earthly affairs. Many things, right from granite stones that are placed upright and have water pouring over them, right up to many popular songs that you hear in the streets of India, maybe in the West, I don't know. Many, 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 many ways. They're doing everything possibly they can to help human beings now to take those steps. Some of them are incarnated in physical bodies, some are working from around the spiritual sphere around the earth. And we can become aware of these beings. Now there's a lot of nonsense talked by masters, talked about masters, and there are a whole series of masters given, for instance, in connection with the aura soma oils. This is all false. You see, unfortunately, there's a great deal of spiritual deception, spiritual charlatanry around the earth, not just emanating from human beings, but emanating from beings that stand higher than human, but are not working in human interest. So there's a great deal of error in this whole field of channeling and so-called masters, ascended masters, all this. This is all nonsense, but there are ascended masters. They do exist, but they don't manifest through channeling and all these things. And this is one reason why esotericism, spirituality, has in many circles a very bad name, because the scope for deception and self-deception is absolutely enormous. That's why, again, I say, come to the centre, come to an absolute inner truthfulness, then you will not be deceived. But there's so much self-gratification in channeling, receiving from so-called St. Michael, so-called Rudolf Steiner, all this kind of stuff. And it's not only stupid and distracts you, but in the end it's dangerous. It's a very, very dangerous bypass which places you under the influences of beings who do not favour human evolution. So, the masters are there, yes, and they're working in very, very many ways, and they have brought many, many new stimuluses to humanity in the last century, and they are very much with us now. And it is possible, but that's a whole other chapter. You heard my tape on the masters. It is possible to work with a particular master if that master has a particular area of interest that coincides with your interest. I'll just give you one example. If you are somebody who likes to work with children, with education, with nourishment, then there's a very particular master who can help you in this area. Now, I cannot name that master because I don't know anymore who it is. I know who it was, but the positions change. And now, for the present time, their names are not being revealed. So if anyone knows who the masters are, they don't know, because it is at the moment not being told. But nevertheless, you can feel that being. The being connected with nourishment, with children, with education, is under the influence of what we call the green ray, the colour green. And if you connect yourself with that energy of green, and it's complementary, a gentle rose colour, you will place yourself in the ray of that master, and you can receive inspiration. But not by way of channeling, by way of the ray of the I Am, your absolute clear presence.
Traditionally, I think green is associated with Hilarion, isn't it? It was said to have been St. Paul, on whom you're giving us a talk in December.
Yeah, I can't remember, to be honest with you. It's been a while since I gave a talk on the range.
I'm not quite sure about that, but I have a feeling that the colour of healing, integration and unity.
Yes. I can say nothing about Master Hilarion. That was... I can have no comment on that at all. But he was not named when the Circle of the 12 was named to us, and in any case that circle has changed now. Yes, any more questions?
But
any more comments?
Have you got any comment on St. Paul?
No, I haven't on St. Paul either.
Without relating him to Harry?
No, I haven't got any. I can't say anything about St. Paul at the moment. I have to leave that to you. I really don't know. I can't.
Are you speaking on the Masters of Shambhala tomorrow?
I'm speaking a little on Shambhala, and I'm speaking in a certain way on the Masters, yes.
And your own master?
Yes,
teacher.
yes.
But if God is
all right.
pure
Yes.
and the ultimate, you have to know that wherever we're at,
yes.
we're going to be at anyway.
Yes.
And wherever we're going to be and wherever we're going to progress to, we're going to get to that point.
Yes.
He's
yes.
knowing, and He knows where we've
yes.
come from, where we're going,
yes.
everything.
Yes.
So we're just going through that evolution in the way He wants us to go.
Now this is a very, very important point here, and this in a way distinguishes, I think, between God as conceived in the cosmic tradition and God as conceived at least by certain Muslims. It is not that God creates and everything has a predetermined and fixed path and the script is already written and we're just, doing the part. Creation always involves something new. And the essence of creation, the essence of God's creation, is that there's always the new is born. If you like, to put it very simply, God loves to have children. Now, if you have children, of course you want the best for them. Of course you have ideas and plans about how their life should go. But if you are a true parent with true love, you don't wish to determine that path of your child. The beauty of having children is it's a new being, one that has never been on the earth before, in this form at least, and you want to see that unfolding and help that unfolding, but this is a free being. Now the essence of this divine seed in us It is, in a certain sense, an image of God, a replica of God, but God is free, and as such we are free beings. And so, if you like, God creates us and sees what happens. Don't ever think of God as a stern father who watches and sees that you behave yourself, or knows exactly where you're going and just watches you do it. God is much more like the being who's created children. What are my children going to do? This is the secret of the Trinity, really, of a God that is a Trinity. God divides himself into a polarization, father and mother we say, so that something can arise. It is the third principle that arises between them, the child, and the child is always new. So we are actually free, we can choose. There is a part of us that can really choose to go one way or the other. And at this particular time in our evolution, when the human being is about really to be born, where we are reaching a certain maturity, we are rising from the level of becoming a creature, a consumer, into becoming a creative being. We are now entering a stage where we are no longer servants of God, but we are becoming co-workers. It is said today, my teacher says time and time again, God wants co-workers. And that is why the present situation of the earth, in the last resort, is in the hands of human beings, not of higher beings. Higher beings are there to help, to protect, to enable it to happen, but it is we who are going to make it happen, or not, if we choose to. But what is being offered us is that now we've done our part, now it is for you to complete the creation. We have a very nice prayer in German. We say it before meals. If I can say it in English, just a moment. Our eternal food is to do the will of our Heavenly Father and to complete His work through Christ His Son, which is referring to the I Am presence in us, so that it may become on earth as it is in the heavens. Not abolish the earth we raise up to a higher level through our work, through our creativity. I don't think there's anything I can drink, my throat is suddenly dry.
On that assumption, if we were to take the wrong route and we were going completely the wrong way,
yes,
then I like to think that if that happens, that the ultimate source would sort of interfere and come in and give us a helping hand.
Yes, it's rather like this. As far as our present Earth situation is concerned, human beings are learning from experience, and they may let things go to the brink with us, but the way it is at the moment, they will not let the Earth go under. They will intervene, if necessary, to save this Earth evolution, this planet, because this planet is very important at the moment. It has reached a very significant stage in its development and is important for the surrounding cosmos. In general, human beings can choose. Now, in the Bible it says, there's a division between the sheep and the goats, the chosen and the not chosen, and so on. We are right in such a process at the moment, and we can choose. Thanks very much. Hope the gulp, gulp, gulp doesn't come down the tape recorder.
Okay.
Yes. So those who are able to receive the light, to go on, they will be able to go on. The others who can't, who don't, who refuse, will remain behind. This does not mean eternal damnation, you go to hell, you've lost it. It means their development will go on at a slower pace. And perhaps, ultimately, in a different cosmic sphere. It could also be that. But, of course, the whole divine purpose and the whole way of things happening is that everything, all beings, in the end, find their way back to unity with God. But we can choose whether it's now or 10 million years or whenever we like. And my teacher sometimes puts it like this: every soul is equally valuable. It's only a question of time and of pace of when they arrive there. Each human soul is equally valuable, but each human soul is different, is unique. That is the interest in evolution, and each human soul is like a child that goes its own way. in the sense that I've explained earlier. And as such, if you like, that's interesting to God. Why should God create a predetermined, pre-planned thing? No, He creates so that more creation can arise through free beings.
I always think each one is so special and so unique that they have something they can do better than anyone else. And that's why they're here, because if there was only one of us needed, only one of us would be here.
Yes, yes. Okay. Anything else from anybody else, or are we going to have a very disciplined early night tonight?
Carol, do you think that's why, at the moment, yoga has very much come to the fore?
Yes, I do. I think and that way it's a very positive thing. I do think that the traditional yoga is a good thing, but it's not so relevant for today as people make out. I've noticed that even yoga itself is undergoing a transformation, the way it's being taught by some modern teachers. It is nevertheless a wonderful thing, but I think it's a real entry in here for people who otherwise would find no access to self-transformation. And it begins by giving people a more spiritual relationship to their own body. The exercises are good. If they're taught well, they do make you healthy. They do set in motion good energy streams in the body. But the reason why I'm saying it is in itself not the way of today as such is because we need actually a new kind of yoga, which is what I am learning with my master. This yoga that was given, the traditional yoga, was given thousands of years ago, and it was given to help the human being take hold of the physical body more strongly. And now we're in a stage where we need to develop much more an awareness of the etheric body directly, the pranic body, the life energy system that permeates and sustains the physical body. We need to work now directly with these so-called etheric forces, which is also the meaning of the waterman, the age of Aquarius. We're in the age of Aquarius now. We are the water bearer. We need to be able to work directly with our ether forces. Now, of course, the old yoga knew of these forces, but it didn't set them free in the same way. We need exercises that help us to set those forces free in such a way that we can use them and master them and penetrate with the I am more deeply into them. And this is the modern yoga. And I've noticed with certain yoga teachers coming to the West and so on, they're beginning to sense this in some way, and the yoga exercises are beginning to change. And as such, it's good. So on the one hand, I can really applaud it, but I've also seen many people, especially Western people, especially in India, searching for transformation, searching for enlightenment, stuck in the old yoga, and I can see them getting stuck. They're not, and they sometimes feel that also, and they don't know why. Because they need a different kind of exercise. And the yoga isn't providing it.
Does this new yoga have a name, or is it Kriya Yoga, or it's beyond that even?
It's not Kriya Yoga, but Kriya Yoga is also very useful in that it takes hold of the Kundalini energies. It begins to, and all this that I've been talking about as a divine seed is intimately connected with what we call Kundalini, but I haven't talked about it from that point of view tonight.
Can you say more about Bhakti Yoga, which is more the devotional side?
No, I haven't been talking especially about any of those, but if you like, Bhakti Yoga is an aspect, yeah, that devotion is one of those very important feelings or soul attitudes that we need to develop to create this aura around the divine seed, and a part of devotion will help us to do that very much. But the Kundalini is a very big theme, and I'm saving that for my next visit. The Kriya Yoga nevertheless uses these forces directly, and as such it is useful. I don't know enough about it to make more of a comment on it at the moment, but I know some people who are engaged in this stream of Kriya Yoga that comes from the Yogananda. Mm-hmm. And I also have the feeling there that they're doing some very good things, but they're also doing things that can cause them to stick. Mm-hmm. Because exactly these insights that I have been talking about are not actually quite there. I think yoga, yeah, that is true, of course it's quite right what you say. Yoga as such, is capable of transformation. And I've noticed transformations coming in it, and the yoga teachers of the West, who are sincere and serious, will look for these things. I am very closely associated with a young Indian man, an Ayurvedic doctor. I live with his family, and we've had a lot of contact with each other. He teaches the traditional Patanjali yoga. He's very good in it. And he himself has discovered that this yoga has to progress, and he himself has discovered ways to do this, which I found to be in harmony with what my teacher is teaching. One reason why ego enters into this whole yoga area is because the old yoga teachers, they're clinging on to the old yoga, but it's no longer penetrated fully with insight, and it is no longer being transformed. And wherever something is not able to be transformed, it's not able to be living, this is where arrogance and ego and power seeking enters in. But he himself has now called this his particular form of yoga, Urja Yoga, energy yoga. And of course what my teacher is teaching is this new yoga, but it doesn't have one particular trade name at the moment.
Talking about the chakra center when you're dealing with the energies then?
Not just that, that also. I'm dealing far more with exercises that are founded on a very, very deep knowledge of the physical and the etheric and the whole constitution, and these exercises tend to be much more exercises in movement, much more than the end position that you come to. It's how you get there, the process that you come through. And some of these exercises we call deep gymnastics, and so they really do work with the muscles of the body and so on. But at the same time they work on all levels and have a very big significance for developing your spiritual body. I've discovered just a very few of these connections myself, and our teacher has encouraged us. He said, do these exercises and study how they work. But they tend to be more dynamic and moving, more interested in the process, the route whereby you come to a certain bodily position, and of course the breathing. Of course in yoga, of course, you combine breathing and asana.
Not all teachers do.
No. And then, but it also includes other types of movements as well as what we call these deep gymnastics. It includes a very great deal of very free flowing movements and different kinds of flowing movements which work very directly on the etheric body. It includes the whole sphere of dance, what we call cosmic dance, and dance gestures, which again have great workings on the human organism. I mean now the greater organism, the chakras, the etheric body and so on. But they are dances, and often combined with initiatic melodies, so the melodies also work. So this whole spectrum I include under what we can call yoga, the teaching of my teacher. He sometimes gives the name ideorhythmos, the rhythm of the cosmos, or the cosmic dance. But it goes from real gymnastic muscular exercises right up to the sphere of dance and also free dance, but done in a certain way, so that your movement body comes into real harmony with the whole cosmos. Thereby, for the first time, you attain total freedom in your movement.
Are you still following the classical lines of yoga, or is it completely different? There's a complete freedom in what you're doing. I mean, is there an ultimate exercise? Say, for instance, like triangle. You do a certain thing with triangle. I understand that it's not the getting there to the idea.
No.
It's the actual performing.
Yes.
And how you feel when you're actually doing it.
Yes.
But is there a classical exercise that you're working to, or is there complete freedom in?
Well, there's not one exercise, or perhaps there is one exercise in a way that sums up all the exercises. There is one such, and that would be what we call the life tree exercise, which is really an etheric exercise that works very directly on the etheric body, but on all levels. And we always do that exercise daily, twice a day. It's a very, very profound exercise.
So do they do that at the place at Shiva Land?
Oh yes, we do all this work at Shiva Land, but there are a great many. There's a tremendous vocabulary of exercises, and it's not a question of one exercise, but of choosing very many that work on different areas of your being. I mean, I could get up and start demonstrating now, but this is perhaps not quite the place. But it's a body of exercises that's very effective and works very quickly. Would you agree with that, Jill, or how do you feel about this? Because you started this work, and you do these kind of exercises with us. Yes, they work on your energies very quickly. They work on all levels. And all this is why our centre is there. This is one of the main aspects of our project, is the central spiritual school, the central part, the central area, which we also call Bhairavnagar, or the home of Shiva and Shakti, where the temples are. Yes, sorry.
All I was going to say was that, of course, Yogananda claimed for Kriya Yoga that it would accelerate the person's evolution by millions of years. It's a very large, it would be an immense evolution.
Yeah.
There are one or two people who in our group who are very keen on the self-realization process and Yogananda's teachings. I was just wondering if you had any comment more generally on his teachings as a way forward, and particularly on the autobiography of a yogi and Man's Eternal Quest, which are his two main books.
Yes. I can't say a great deal about it. I felt that Yogananda himself was a very pure being, a very light-filled being, and that probably what he brought was very good. It was connected with the Kundalini, and as such, if it really activates the Kundalini in a good way, it would do that, exactly what you've described. And what I'm describing is of a similar nature. It suddenly places you on a higher level of evolution, quite suddenly, if this awakening really happens. This is intimately connected with the Kundalini. I've described creating this aura, this energy field around the seed. If you do this, of course, the Kundalini will awake directly. What he's doing is calling up some of this energy of the Kundalini. Now we say the Kundalini is awake or it's not awake, but the Kundalini itself is very complex. It is the fire that created us. It has to do with the DNA code and so on. It is your individual aspect of the goddess which has created you, and it knows your light code. And this very complex fire has 72 main streams, and it only needs one of them, a little bit of one of them, to waken up, and already your evolution is greatly, greatly speeded up. If you awaken all 72 streams at once, you will die immediately, you will burn. Kundalini is not something to be fooled around with, which is why I haven't mentioned it or made it a theme tonight, and I actually want to learn more from my teacher, get more indications from him before I address it very publicly.
And your exercises that you do there,
yeah.
will actually help
yes.
to raise the different
yes.
streams of Kundalini.
Yes, any good yoga will do that. Now what is not good about certain forms of Hatha yoga is where they try to force the Kundalini upwards, as they do in certain schools, through what they call these energy locks, the bandhas and so on. They try to force the Kundalini into the Sushumna, and then that can create very bad problems if the organism isn't prepared, right up to even causing death. That happens. I imagine, and probably it is so, that in the Self-Realization Fellowship they have a good knowledge, and they don't do anything that would cause danger to the organism, and he has a way of stimulating the Kundalini on what we call the vital level, or that it wakes up to that extent that the organism is prepared. I assume that. I don't really know, but I don't have any evidence to the contrary, whereas with some other schools of yoga that I know about, I know that they do sometimes force things, and that's very disastrous. So probably he did. When I know for certain they circulate the energies in a certain way, which also comes in our exercises. But the way we work, it does two things. On the one hand, it gradually purifies the whole system, clears the pathways for the Kundalini, and on the other hand, it begins to give that amount of stimulus that the Kundalini can flow on what we call the vital level, because a certain Kundalini flow has always to be there that we can really live. You know, it is, after all, our source of life. So it clears it and the chakras on the vital level that they can fully fulfill their function. But when the seed is there, or when the ray of the I Am, at least, is properly installed in the human being, that will, at a certain point itself, call the Kundalini awake. And this is the only way that is healthy for the Kundalini as such to awaken. But as I say, from what I gather from the work of Kriya Yoga, of self-realization fellowship, it is a healthy path, and it is certainly true that with every awakening of the Kundalini, your evolution is enhanced. What my teacher is doing, he's also bringing in quite new elements into the human being, which also lead to great leaps in evolution, in consciousness. This is what's meant to happen now.
And the other two great Indian teachers you've mentioned, yesterday Sri Aurobindo and today Ramana Maharishi,
yes,
did they also have systems of yoga or systems which would accelerate our evolution, or did they rather leave that as more a matter of detail, but if they gave a more cosmic picture, would it be? I mean, Aurobindo's is often known as integral yoga.
Yes, yeah. I think actually Aurobindo is difficult to study, but I think he provides the best bridge between East and the West. And from what the little I've read from him, it seems to correspond most closely with what I've learnt from my teacher. It has that much detail. This amount of detailed knowledge I don't find anywhere else. With Ramana Maharishi, he had the very special task of awakening this I am in the human being. And his sole teaching was this, just by his presence, just by his being. He just said, inquire who you are. That was really the sum total. And he brought a kind of higher awakening of the cosmic I am. That was his task. Sri Aurobindo worked more with bringing down this cosmic I am energy. He talked about the supramental light into the general earth atmosphere. He did a very great work for the whole of humanity in a different way, in that he was less concerned with his own or the individual's development, rather more concerned with enabling the whole energy field of the earth to be so enhanced that human beings could go on progressing. Because actually, in one way, we are so declining, we are so polluted, we've so polluted our planet that there's no physical body on earth, even of the highest yogi, that isn't affected by this pollution. And he was doing something to counteract that. He was more trying to make it possible that we can all take up these evolutionary steps. It could be that the divine seed in some people cannot enter, and it will then just go back to the divine, and that organism will just fall away. I mean, I'm talking about over more incarnation. So we are at a very important point where we have to begin to transform the earth now. So these different great yogis and teachers had certain aspects of the work. I could imagine that with Yogananda, he had the task of beginning to awaken, to activate the Kundalini, to transform the physical body, the brain, the nervous system. Whereas Ramana, it was definitely to awaken the sense of the I am in the individual, the true identity. And then Aurobindo was working behind the scenes. It was the mother that ran the ashram. He lived in retirement, but he was doing a great spiritual work to bring the spiritual light down. And he had a great knowledge about how the spirit works in matter.
I've been talking about the new blue coming out of the heart chakra. This is a new aspect of the heart.
Yes.
I don't know if there's anything you've come across that would relate to this.
No. Yes.
We should associate the heart with the green.
Yes, exactly. But he said that the green is still there. But I think one of the things he said was the heart chakra was a bit affected by all our past experiences, and the green had become sullied a little bit over many lifetimes. And this new blue was a new development. I can't remember the details.
Well, there are many colours in the chakras. You see, we think the chakra is one colour, and you find in many yoga books the heart chakra is red, it is green, it is blue. But I will say this, that on the one hand, it could be that he's perceived something of what I'm talking about. Every human being is equipped, so to speak, from the very beginning with a kind of extract of cosmic law. It's a kind of primal conscience. You know, we have this problem that here are you and I as normal human beings, and we are often asked to say whether we believe in, let us say, Jesus Christ or Yogananda or this, that or the other. And there are many, many situations where we have to decide out of our own judgment, is this true or not true? Or is this good or not good? And here we are, normal human beings, and we have to make these big decisions. That would seem to be an impossible situation. God has put us in an impossible situation. But we do have at the very centre, somewhere deeply buried in the heart, this, as it were, cosmic extract. This extract of cosmic law, which is a kind of cosmic conscience or measuring rod, and it is totally independent of any moral systems or social systems. It's what is. You know, God isn't a Christian or a Hindu or a Muslim or doesn't believe in one wife or four wives or whatever. It's the truth. It's what is. And yes, it is in a way. And this possibly could appear in the form of blue. Blue is connected with truth. And I think this cosmic essence, which we call Sor in our tradition, S-O-R, it might be, I'm not sure, but I have a feeling it might be pictured spiritually as a little blue sphere. So that might be what Stanley Messenger was perceiving. I don't know. Either of these are possible. But this deep, we also call this spiritual blue, the Marian blue, blue of Mary, but it's a spiritual colour, which means it is luminous, as you described. This also is in any way intimately connected with the heart being our centre of truth. So it would be quite proper to see this blue. There are some gurus who say the heart chakra is blue, but as I say, the heart chakra isn't one colour. It's nourished by particular colours, among others green. Yes, but I mean every material object also has its effect on the spiritual. Now it's interesting that the gods in Hinduism are very often portrayed as blue. Like Krishna is portrayed as a dark blue. Shiva is very often, but not always, portrayed with a bluish complexion. Yeah. And God appears as blue, we put it like this, when he's coming to re-establish truth in the world. Right. And Krishna says, I come, he says in the Bhagavad Gita, I come whenever the world is in great danger, I incarnate to bring the world back to, to its right path, whenever evil increases. Shiva, the god Shiva, drank the world poison, and it got stuck in his throat, and he transformed it here, it became blue. He's called the blue-throated one. The blue is connected with the truth and with the transformation of what is sick.